I couldn't talk to my bosses very well because I'd feel like I was choking. But again, I just thought it was because I was shy, but it was anxiety. So there's hope for you. There's things that you can do that can actually help you really overcome that and leave such a productive life. It'll just increase your work performance and your confidence in the workplace.
Welcome to the Tomorrow is Not Today podcast. You've already started to create the life you want just by being here. Designed for you as a business professional so you can be physically, mentally and emotionally healthy, more productive, less stressed and living a life you truly love. My name's Kingsley and thank you for coming on another journey with one of our uniquely qualified professionals. Bree Colley has been part of the health and fitness industry for over 5 years now. She is a qualified personal trainer and sports nutritionist. She has become a coach so she can fulfill her passion to help other people in this area. Her mission is to create a sustainable and flexible approach for each individual to live a healthier lifestyle. Health has so many variables to unpack and discover. By paying more attention to the fundamentals and the needs, people can achieve the results they want and the results that last. Kylie Taylor, thank you so much for joining us on the Tomorrow is Not Today podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to this podcast, and you have been one of the first people I wanted to get on here because I'm intrigued by not just by your story, but what you've overcome as a person. And now you are taking things and helping other people. And I think if we can all learn to do that, the whole world would be in a so much better place. So that's what we want to do. And as we do in this podcast, always, we get straight into it with the big questions. Now, I do want to let people know as well, we are going to delve into some areas that you may not hear a lot on some other podcasts and other places. We're here to help people. That's what it's all about. And so hopefully you can take some things away from this yourself personally that can really make a difference in your life and your work and your career and your whole family and everything else involved. So we're hitting the topic of trauma. So Kylie, tell me, what is trauma and how do we see it outworked in our business life and our personal life?
That is a really big question. And I do just want to make sure that everyone does know we are talking about trauma. If you are triggered by anything we do say today, I just want to make sure that you reach out for support and some help for somebody. Take care of yourself. If you are triggered by anything that we do talk about today, that may mean pause, go for a walk, do whatever you need to do. But do please take care of yourself if you are listening to this podcast today. So trauma is a very big thing to cover. It's kind of feels like, how do we even do that in 1 hour? Yeah. I really like Gabor Mate's kind of, he puts it in a very palatable way, and he simply says that trauma is what happens inside of us as a result of things that happen to us. And so often in life, we all have varied experiences, and those things impact us in quite a significant way sometimes. What we do know about trauma is, or trauma events, I like to call them, is what happens in a trauma event is that you get so overwhelmed with stress. Your stress response is so overwhelming that if that's prolonged and ongoing, it causes changes like chemical changes in your body that can cause biological changes, and it causes ongoing ongoing effects in your body. So, often we think of, anxiety or depression and whatnot, but those are the bigger kind of things that we see. But the smaller things is health problems, like gut issues, there's hair issues, skin issues, all this kind of reactions that we have biologically because of trauma events. So it's actually a really significant area that's being studied a lot in neuroscience at the moment, because I think historically we've probably underestimated the impact of trauma and the ongoing effects on us biologically. So I don't know if that kind of covers what you're asking.
That's a brilliant answer. That covers a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So it's really important, I guess, to recognise the signs of the impact of trauma, and get to know yourself, and get to know yourself well. Have good friends, have good support networks, so that you can overcome some of the impact of that. Yeah.
That brings us down to a whole new level there, because obviously a lot of people have various issues, whether it's skin issues, whether it's other gut health issues or hair issues like you mentioned. How do we know, or what do we do to actually determine, is this trauma related or is it something else?
Yeah. Great question. Again, that's where you rely on your GP. My protocol is always GP. If you've got a good relationship with your GP, go and have a chat to them. And if you don't have a good rapport where you feel like you can explore some of that stuff, get a new GP. But your GP is the first person that can do some exploratory stuff. I know for myself, not that long ago, I went through something and I went to my GP. She did all the normal blood tests, and she just came back and said, I know that you've got a diagnosis of complex trauma. I think that's what we're looking at here. I think you need to take better care. You need to, be monitoring your sleep. Are you exercising? And we went back to those basic things around, okay, your body's having a reaction here and we need to address that because everything else is actually looking okay. It's not, my GP, is always the first protocol in terms of what are we looking at, but in the other extreme as well, it may not be trauma. You may be deficient in something. You know what I mean? So your GP is someone that, is a really great resource in terms of actually finding out what's actually happening for you. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. That's a really, really important point too, I think. So that's on the physical aspect there.
Yeah.
Let's say we're at work, because a lot of our audience are business professionals. They're pretty highly stressed in their work and what they do and that sort of thing as well. So if they're sort of feeling things going on, how would it maybe outwork in a mental capacity with emotions or different things like that? And then if we do feel there may be something there, again, is it go to the GP or what's the best thing to do that way?
Yeah. So, and that is a really good question again, because we're all so different and trauma also presents so differently in all of us. And depending on our histories, depending on our backgrounds, depending on what happened to kind of, prelude that trauma. And it doesn't, I also wanted to say before as well, it doesn't have to be a traumatic event. What they're finding out through neuroscience now is extreme stress. Like, you got to think trauma is a response to extreme stress. It's an extreme stress response. And so when we are under, business people, or whatever we do. I'm a social worker, so I've worked in some really high-paced, high-demand areas sometimes. I've had big caseloads, I've had deadlines, I've had court reports, I've had all those sorts of things as well. The stress and the constant stress, constant deadlines, constant grinding can have a similar chemical response in our body to what trauma does, but they call it allostatic load. Your allostatic load is too high and everything gets out of whack, and it has a similar response to trauma. So while some people, on some response, you can have a whole different range of trauma response. So when we talk about trauma, we talk about acute, like a one-off event. So we're talking maybe a car accident or a death of a loved one, or like war, or a terrorist attack, or these extreme, like sexual assault, all those sorts of things, these one-off things that can have a trauma response. So we have acute trauma. And then we have, like a chronic ongoing trauma. So that could be one single event. Again, it could be DV or something that's constantly happening and constantly under the stress of that child abuse or something like that. You're constantly under the stress of that. Or you can have complex trauma, which is multiple different stresses, multiple different childhood, abuse, sexual abuse, ongoing sexual abuse. You can have, DV. DV is known as a complex kind of trauma because it's constantly, and there's multiple facets to it. And so there's all these different parts of trauma, but particularly when it's ongoing and prolonged, has a similar impact to prolonged and ongoing stress. So we've got to understand that when we're in a business, or we're in a workplace and we're under the pump constantly, we've really got to understand what's happening to us biologically if we think that we can honestly keep maintaining that pace over a long period of time. Sorry, but you're kidding yourself. Absolutely kidding yourself, because there's going to be something that something's got to give. And, you just want to really take care of your mental health, particularly in a workplace. In terms of trauma, how does it present in a workplace? Again, that's actually, it's a really individual thing. I find myself, because I have had a lot of childhood trauma and called it in recovery, I know that if I sit at a high workload at a high pace where I don't have any downtime to help reset myself and kind of breathe, that will become a trigger for me. And then I kind of get anxiety. And then because I know I'm getting to that point, I start getting more anxiety, and then I start even working even harder because I'm trying to avoid the anxiety, and you get yourself into a vicious circle, So again, depending on where you work and depending what your trigger is, what was your abuse, what was your trauma, what was the thing that triggered that, will be a really big indicator around how that's going to present in a workplace. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and again, it's really, really varied. And this is where getting to know yourself and being honest with yourself, and being able to, upskill, find out what you can about, trauma and things like that. Ongoing fatigue. Like if you're just getting up every day and you're so fatigued, you don't want to go to work. You just, the thought of it, you feel sick in the stomach, you just check in with yourself. Is your workload too high? Is there some part of, do you need to have a discussion with your manager? If you're the manager, maybe you need to have a discussion around, having a look at your timetable, having a look at your pressures and trying to alleviate some of that for yourself, putting in some really good work practices. Sleep hygiene is really important. All those sorts of things. So really taking note. And if you're really noticing your mental health is changing, something's different, then you're probably getting to the point where your allostatic load's, ready to give a little bit. So yeah, having a checking in with your GP. Do you have EAP? What's your well-being process in your workplace? Do you have one? If not, maybe implement one. Good eating, exercising, all of those sorts of things, and really prioritizing your well-being. Cannot stress it enough for longevity in terms of a workplace. Yeah.
Kylie, that's just absolute gold, everything you've just said there. And I want to try and unpack a couple of little things that you've mentioned. Yeah. And one of the big things that you talked about is stressful jobs. There's a lot of people. We actually had on our podcast earlier a guy called Greg Gillies, who was a high-pressure exec CEO. He was just working. And he was doing great, looked fantastic on the outside, but he ended up having burnout and had to stop and give everything up because of that. And he actually helps people through all this now, which was fantastic. And it was great having him on the podcast as well. There's a lot of people there, whether they're high-pressure execs, they may be in pressured jobs like lawyers or accountants, real estate agents, these things where they deal with this constant deadlines and pressure and things are going wrong all the time and they got to fix it, all this sort of thing that goes on, and obviously a lot of other industries as well. If you were to speak with them, they don't have time to do these things that need to be done to look after yourself. What would be a message you would give to them, and what is a way to maybe start to implement some ways you can have that time?
I don't think you have time not to, honestly, because like you said, you're the person that you just mentioned. Sorry, I forgot their name. It catches up to you. We're talking about trauma today specifically, and again, it's one of those things you don't have time not to address it. I had my own burnout. I call it my breaking out a number of years ago, where I hadn't addressed all my own childhood trauma. I hadn't addressed any of that. And I just kept, maintaining speed and position. But as I felt like I was starting to burn out, I actually started to run harder because I got afraid of the fact that, I felt like this burnout thing or this breakdown was catching up to me. But the recovery and the pathway back from that was so long and hard. And, the health implications for me was really significant. It took me a really long time to be able to get to the point where I could, just function on a daily basis without feeling like I needed to sleep every day. The road to recovery is so much longer if you don't just take note, take some advice, and take care of yourself. And I do have empathy for a lot of people in my age bracket. I think the younger generation are a little bit better. I know my colleagues are. But, I'm 47 in a couple of months. And I think back to, my childhood and young adult and my early working years, we kind of were priding ourselves in these long days, and the harder you work, the better you are, and the better employee you are, the better boss you are, the better if you can just, grind at it, because we didn't understand mental health. We didn't understand the impact of it, but we're starting to now. And so it's almost like an outdated kind of model to think that that's the right approach, because it doesn't do you any favors. And like you're that person you said, and in my own experience, and anyone I talk to who's been through any kind of breakdown or burnout, the road to recovery is hard and it's longer. And I don't know that my capacity if I feel like I'm hitting that wall, I actually get pretty nervous, because I'm like, I don't want to do that again, because it's just such a hard place to come back from. So, there's so many resources now that are available to us that we never had. I think I mentioned to you in previously, when I was born in 1976, people were still being incarcerated, or institutionalized for mental health. We didn't have our first mental health care plan until the early 1990s. Like, our understanding and our awareness around mental health and mental health practices and well-being is we're learning more and more and more all the time. And so in my workplace, we've introduced hula hoop hour. So we tools down and we grab a hula hoop and we just have these hula hoop competitions, and it's just a moment where everyone just stops what they're doing. We forget about our job for a second. We all work in, people, we work with people. And some days that's quite heavy, when it's emotional labor. It's a lot of emotional labor in the social work and human services. So we tools down and we just do something silly for a minute, and that's a part of our well-being. We have bean bags and picnic rugs. We get outside and we try and get in the fresh air every day, just to take those moments. And some days we don't have time for it, but we also don't have time not to. And we're all very aware of that. So I can't encourage people enough, I don't have enough time. You need to change something about your workload. Hire someone else, do something, dump a client, do something, but make it a priority. Yeah.
It's interesting when you look at it like that, like what you just said, dump a client or something, because when you put
Sounds terrible, doesn't it? Sorry.
No, but it's anyone in business would understand that. That's not unusual for that sort of way to mention things sometimes. But one of the things is that we want to go and build and be better and do all that sort of thing. But at the same time, we're not looking at what are the actual ongoing effects. Yeah, I might have another client. My business might get a bit better or whatever, and grow a bit more. We may get a few extra bucks in the bank or something like that. But at what cost? What's it actually doing? Who do we want to really be? Where are we really heading? Because it sounds like from what you're saying is that it doesn't matter what you think you're going to gain. If you don't stop and do something about it now, if you're in that position, it is going to catch up and you will pay.
Absolutely. You can't outrun it. You can't outrun the impact on your body. Your body keeps the score. There's a really great book about that. Your body keeps the score and it catches up with you. I can't stress it enough. We talked before about, how do you, I think you mentioned how how do you recover from trauma or something like that? And a part of that's integration. And integration means to integrate what's the truth of, your what's happened, the truth of your past, the truth of your stress about the job, integrate it into who you are. It's not an end all. You don't keep yourself at the door and you walk in. You are every part of you is a part of you. And I know for myself, before I had my breakdown, and even after, to a degree, I would go into my workplace and I would park all of that at the door, and I wouldn't mention anything. And it's really only been in recent years that I've really been able to talk about my lived experience, as in not in detail, but yeah, I have lived experience in that myself. I worked in a workplace I worked in for 6-7 months in one particular office before I moved to another. I didn't even tell people there that I had children. It really decompartmentalized my life. And it again doesn't do you any favors to separate yourself and to think that I can separate that stress, or I can park that stress, or I can just put that away and just to get the job done, because you still need to be able to go home with yourself. And that stuff, when you suppress it down and you push it down, at some point it's going to come out, and sometimes it comes out in a pretty forceful way, and it will get your attention. So again, well-being, it's just, to me, I prioritize it now. Absolutely make it my priority. And I'm okay to just say no to things, like where in the past I felt like I was missing out on something or I couldn't do something. And then it only takes a couple of workplaces to realize you leave and they've put someone else in your chair 2 seconds later. It doesn't matter how hard you work. You are replaceable, but your health isn't. We're nothing without our health and our well-being. So prioritizing it is, to me, it's a no-brainer at all.
So in workplaces, like you mentioned that you have hula hoop hour, what are some things that maybe if we've got some business owners, law firm owners and directors and things like that are thinking, what can we actually do to implement? Because we know it's becoming a bigger and bigger thing. And I know in a bunch of different industries that I've mentioned, the rate of mental breakdown and even suicide and things like that is actually getting bigger and bigger. And we don't hear a lot about it, which is probably good and bad, but it's definitely becoming more and more in the fore. And I'm actually really surprised about how big mental health actually is, and that we're only really just getting to the point of recognizing this for what it is now in 2023, really. That sort of blows my mind. But what can workplaces do to implement things to help their teams along?
That's again a really great question. I like flexible work arrangements sometimes, like flexible hours, like what's going to work for people in their lifestyle with their kids, particularly when, like you've got mums or whatever who have commitments in terms of getting home and relieving that mother guilt. So is it, can they work is there ability to have flexible working arrangements from 7 till 3, 8 to 4, and, 9 to 5? Some people don't like it. It's becoming, better accepted. But that all those sorts of things and those stresses add, pressure to people in the workplace, because they're thinking, I've got to get home, got to get my kids, and then they've got their mother guilt. I've worked in other places where we did another tools down thing, and we would do stop and stretch. And so we had someone each, and it would always rotate who was in charge of it. So it was tools down and someone was in charge of doing a stop and stretch, and everyone had to get up, move away from your workplace and do a stretch. Communal lunches. Everyone has to walk away from their desk, get away from your desk at least for half an hour and have lunch all together, or away from, and the team leaders were all very instrumental in making sure that happened, just those sorts of things that add value. Ask your people, what would work for you here? What can we do to support you? And start being really proactive around, EAP and, those things that support people to get the support that they need. Mental health days, we have organizations I work in, they have a mental health day in recognition that sometimes people just need to have a break. You just need a day off when you're not sick, and tapping into your sick leave. So I don't know if that's the kind of thing that you're meaning, but
Yeah.
doing some research, getting organizational psychologists in to have a look at the way that your organization functions, because that they all function quite differently too. They have all different parameters and legal responsibilities. Like the place that I work at now, doing hula hoop hour wouldn't have worked at a previous workplace I worked at. We just didn't have the room. You know what I mean? Like, so, organizational psychologists, it's a worthy investment to come in, have a look at what your business is doing, what's your function, and then implementing some stuff strategic that works in your organization within your parameters. Does that make sense?
Yep. No, that's great. There's a lot of good ideas there. And I think, like you said, an organizational psychologist or someone like that to come in, have a look what's there. Because if you're running a business, you can't see everything.
No.
And at the moment, the more and more pressures are being put on business. And I know there's more legislation about to come through as well in the mental health for business. And the business owner's got to try and deal with it. And you can't deal with it all yourself. You do need external help to help with all of this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But even what you just said then, you said, when you said, you're the business owner and your responsibility is the strategic plan, staffing, legal responsibilities, you have all of that. That's your responsibility because you're the CEO, you're the business owner. In terms of well-being and mental health, it's a no-brainer to get someone in who specializes in well-being and mental health. That's their specialization. You know what I mean? And so they have that lens, and they're always looking for ways that we can that you can strengthen that. I know we've even got a communal mushroom thing that we have. We have plants in our workplace now, so we have this tub where it's growing mushrooms at the moment. So there's all these different things that we try and do. We do. When we're just like it's busy, we all just pull tools down. We all walk across the road. We all get a coffee together. Just those sorts of things that But because we're mental health and we're social workers or we're psychologists or we're in this industry, we all kind of value that in our workplace. It's a really high value that we have, and so creating that culture around and valuing it and having that lens where this is actually really valuable. Your first investment for any organization are your people, your workforce. They are your biggest resource, and unless you're an IT company and it's all AI, but your biggest resource is your people. So learning how to look after them and investing in ways to, getting someone in to help you with that is, it can't be understated.
Now, one of the things you just mentioned there is about getting a coffee, going out, getting a coffee and doing that sort of thing. There's going to be people listening right now who are like, I don't like doing that with other people. I like to be by myself. I like to have my own time and my own space. It's not something I want to necessarily go and do. How do we sort of accommodate for that as well? Because I think there are quite a few people like that.
Yeah.
To me, I don't understand them, but that's why we're all different.
Yeah, for sure.
And I get it because some work environments can be a little bit intimidating. And they're set up for different types of people and different activities in that way. Have you got any ideas for how people like that can actually help themselves as well, or the workplace can help those people as well?
Yeah. I worked at a place. It was a legal responsibility where I worked. I don't want to say the name of where it was, and it was a very different environment where people did we were almost silos. We worked alongside one another, but the pressure of the work meant that we were kind of just silos. But in that workplace management, we did other things in terms of, they would walk around. And again, apparently this is actually, some psychologists are saying this isn't great, but I found it really good. But making sure that everyone leaves at the right time at the end of the day. You can get to work anytime, but that 5 o'clock cutoff, it was like, okay, we're all leaving, we're closing up, and so just those sorts of, that sort of thing, making sure people are taking their lunch breaks. They would monitor us and make sure that they would do a sweep. Have you had your lunch break? You need the tools down. You need to take a break. Just those little things and I didn't necessarily mix in that workplace. I would go by myself and have lunch, but I did leave the workstation. We all had access to numbers. We did the birthday thing. So everyone's birthday, the organization will always, someone had a birthday party and they get a cake. Those little things that let people know that even though you're an introvert, people still care.
Yeah.
And that lunch breaks were taken. People were finishing on time. You had your one-to-ones, your supervisions. I don't know how it works. We have supervision, so we're always checking in with the supervisor on our well-being. And those are the questions. It's always about, how are you going? I'm not sure how businesses do that. If they do supervision, I'm not sure how that functions. But yeah, it's something that we did. And we have an external supervisor as well, just always checking in. How are you tracking? How are you going? And because you have that person that's checking in, I don't know whether they have one-to-ones or a peer buddy thing in businesses, but where it's you have someone that's checking in. How's it? How are you going? And you build that rapport, and then you get to the point where actually I'm not doing so great. This isn't so great for me. And you have that person checking.
Does it take a little while for some people to be honest with that aspect? Because
absolutely,
things you don't want to tell the people about it.
No, yeah, and we're all so different, and it depends on the workplace and your previous experience. Like we talked about trauma, people's previous experience. If they have, been honest in the workplace, previously, and they had been judged or they had had a bad reaction, then it's going to take you time, and that's all normal too, and that's okay. I was talking recently to a group of people from my current workplace, and I actually really respect the place that I work currently, because we have so much freedom around integration of who we are and our lived experience, and the ability to actually be honest about that in our workplace. So you feel like you can bring all of you to your practice. We don't bring it into our client work ever. It's never something that we bring into our client work, but our colleagues we're all aware of one another's stuff, and it makes and we're accepting of it. And it makes a really lovely workplace in the sense that you don't have to explain stuff to one another. We have that integration. And I feel like if more workplaces, we had the capacity and the ability to bring our whole selves to work, I feel like people's productivity would go up. Do you know what I mean? Because you're not kind of compartmentalizing yourself. You're not leaving part of yourself at the door because you're afraid you're going to be judged or this or that, or it's going to be held against you, or, your work performance isn't up to scratch, it's because of X, Y, Z. It's got nothing to do with that. I just didn't sleep very well last night, So, like I ate bad pizza and I had a tummy ache. That's all, So yeah, it's quite a nice, very, like I said before, I've worked in places I didn't even tell people I had children, and I worked with some of these people for 7-8 months, and they didn't know anything about my life at all, by comparison to where I am now, where it's that integration of your whole self. I feel very whole being able to do that. So it's really nice, very cathartic. Yeah.
I think in Western culture as well, we've got this thing where if you're the boss and it's your business, we put on this, I've got it. It's almost like the old stoic dad type of thing, where no, I've got it. I'm bulletproof. Nothing can affect me. And I think we're still a little bit that way when it comes to work at the moment as well. And obviously there needs to be a degree of that. I totally
absolutely
get that.
And I can appreciate that.
Yeah, but how, I guess, making it so that employees are willing to come and say things, because I think there needs to be a little bit of vulnerability there. Otherwise, they're going to be very reluctant, or you're going to look at me bad and for my performance, or may not do as well or whatever like that. How can we actually make that something that's a little bit easier to blend together?
Again, another great question. I think the best example of that is, a number of workplaces ago, and then in where I currently am, is that it was led by, and I was actually in shock, to be honest, when I very first, because I've always worked in workplaces where it has been a very stoic management, and it's almost follows that toxic masculinity, toxic femininity kind of model where, like it is stiffer upper lip and you don't let your guard down and we're all tough and we're all strong and there is no vulnerability. Where we're starting to see the downfalls of those kind of, those concepts and those ideologies in exactly what you just said. So in my, two CEOs ago, and then, the one that I'm, in my workplace where I am, a manager, not the CEO, but a manager I was in a meeting with. And they literally just started, hey, we need to be mindful of one another. Let's make room and let's make space for one another. I have my own lived experience of mental health, didn't explain what it was, didn't go into details, just said I have my own experience of mental health because everyone has mental health. Let's just start with that. We all have mental health. We're all on a spectrum of either sometimes our mental health's great, sometimes it's not so great, and we're all somewhere along there, and this person was just honest. I've had times where I haven't done very well in my mental health, and so let's make room for one another and let's make space for one another. And if you are struggling, please speak to one of us so we can make sure that you're supported. And so from there, it just makes everyone else in the organization feel that sense of relief, because if the boss can say it, if the boss can be honest and go, hey, we all struggle from time to time, all of us, but it's also the chatter around the water cooler. It's also the chatter around the office, and that you don't kind of like mock someone or, so-and-so, where when people overhear those kinds of comments, it kind of undoes the safety of the workplace, because you're like, I'm really not going to let my guard down because I'm going to be talked about in the same way. So it becomes a cultural thing where we just make room for one another, we make space for one another, and bring kindness into that space, because particularly now when, we're all under so much financial stress and so much financial pressure, that overshadows so much of everything that we all do as well, and which is adding so much more pressure to people's mental health. Bringing kindness to those discussions, bringing kindness to the workplace, be human. I just think be human. It's a part of our human condition that, sometimes we're doing okay and sometimes we're not. Be kind. Is it really that hard? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's a very good one, actually. I actually put up a post just yesterday when this is actually being recorded about being kind. And it's interesting that the person that's actually doing the kindness gets the same measure of serotonin as the person who has received the kindness, the recipient of it. And not only
that compassion. Yeah.
Yeah. And not only that, but the person giving the kindness, it's actually good for your immune system as well at the same time. It boosts your immune system, which is just mind-boggling. And like you're talking about the culture, the kindness, all that sort of thing, it's not just for them. Actually, when we do that, it's actually good for us as well, and it's better for us.
Yeah.
I just thought it blew my mind when I found that. I want to play devil's advocate just for a little bit. And this is the reason for this is because as humans, the pendulum always swings from one side to the other, and we often find it hard to find the nice middle ground. And we've been in this stoic, I'm the boss, I'm the dad, or whatever it is sort of situation. And we're finally now coming to grips with the things of people have mental health issues and they have feelings and they have emotions and that sort of thing. And I think if we look around a little bit, we see possibly in some areas, maybe not in the workplace at the moment, but where feelings become more important than anything else at times. Is that a concern that could possibly happen in the workplace and people try to take advantage of things like that? Is there a way where we can go, okay, here's a middle ground. This is a great place to be?
I think absolutely. People will always take advantage. It's again human nature. Like if they can, in some respects, and there is always the you can't rule out a tendency to sometimes. I want to be careful the words that I choose.
Yeah.
You will have to just tiptoe around me because I've had this happen. I'm, feeling X, Y, Z, and everyone just has to tiptoe around that. And that's where resilience comes into, start talking about resilience and again, that in a workplace, that's where you have guidelines. You have, you'd have your professional development stuff. You'd have, as in talking about, how to actually park some of that stuff. I think, like I said before, like in our workplace, we were able to talk about it, but it's not everyone else's problem. Like if I'm coming to work and I'm feeling sad and blah, 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 and if I'm not able to perform my job that day because I'm feeling X, Y, Z, I need to take sick leave and I need to not be there. And that may sound harsh, but it's still a workplace and you can't, other people, you've got to be considerate of other people, and you can't bring all your baggage to work and stop other people doing their job as well. That's what I would call probably selfish. So self-awareness, if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling up to it, like with your physical health, if you're not able to go to work and function in a way that to your capacity and fulfill your duties, you need to stay home.
If you've got a bad cold and you go to work, the chances are you can spread it around the whole office. And if you've got a mental issue and you've got feelings and emotions and things like that, and you're going to be miserable and negative and talking bad and that sort of thing around people all the time, then same thing, you can spread that around the whole office. And that's not what anybody needs at all.
No. It's still a workplace, and it's still a workplace is a place where work happens. It's a place where somebody's paying you to get work done. And if you're unable to do that, then you need to not be there that day until you're able to function in a way that you can get your work done and you're also not impacting and stopping other people from performing their duties as well. That's my take on it. That's my ethics around that. That's my, understanding. If you come to work and you're not feeling it, have a conversation with your manager, and take the day if you need to. Yeah, go for a walk along the beach. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself and your own well-being so that you can function as well. Yeah,
that was my next question, actually. So when it does come to those sorts of situations, and I know earlier on in the podcast you mentioned you went and saw your GP and they're like, are you doing this, are you doing this, are you doing this, and gave you some suggestions on things that you need to be doing. What are some suggestions that you would have, like given the scenario that we were just at, people may be feeling it at work or maybe pressures for home, or they're just, I want to make sure that I'm looking after myself the best I can. I try to promote personally and through our coaching and everything we do, the fact of personal responsibility as much as possible. Don't wait to be mandated for mental health things to happen, but take personal responsibility now and move forward. So what would you suggest for people? Two categories. One's who they know they've got trauma issues that may or may not have been dealt with, but they come up. And number two, people who are, I'm doing all right, but I just want to make sure that I stick in that position. Or is it the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot we were talking about trauma for this podcast. Yeah. If you have experienced trauma, like and you've been to see someone, you've had a diagnosis, or you suspect that you do, you've had some ongoing impact, and understanding as well, not everyone's impacted the same by trauma. You can have two people who walk through a traumatic event and come out of it quite differently, depending on your support, your biological makeup. There's a whole range of things that contribute to the way you come out of that trauma event. But if you have come out of it and you know that you've already got a diagnosis of complex trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder, or you've got that sitting in the background and you know it, or it's likely because you've been through a lot, or there's circumstances have been really hard on you. I cannot stress enough your well-being, because it changes the way your body functions and it changes the way that your body responds to stress. And so, and again, it's really individual what your well-being plan looks like. It's really about finding out what gives back to you. What are those things that you do that give you joy? So for me, I have plants. I have a lot of plants in my house. And when I just potter around and I'm playing with my plants and whatnot, that to me is actually a well-being thing, because I enjoy it and I always feel fulfilled after it. And so it's something that I have to do each week, because they'll die if I don't, and then I'll get sad. So but like, I'm really strict on my bedtimes. I have really good sleep hygiene. I get my rest. I eat really well. I exercise. And again, it's really, really different. Like, you might be a reader. Nails, might be a thing for you. Just going and doing something like that. Not for you, Kingsley. Maybe you don't want to get your nails done, but
maybe.
Maybe you might. I'm not judging. But, like, it might be going to the gym. It might be, cycling. It might, whatever it is that you kind of go, that actually gives me joy. Prioritize it. If it's going on a holiday and that's really important for you, prioritize it. Making sure you're taking holidays. Like, I went through a couple of years where I had accumulated all these holidays. I had 1 week off in an 18-month period. It's dumb. I'm just going to say it's dumb. So forcing yourself, even if you don't feel like you need it, take the breaks. Because your body needs it, whether you recognize it or not. Your body needs it.
You don't feel like you need it until you've actually done it, and you go, I really needed that.
Yeah. And it creeps up on you slowly, those that hollowness, that feeling like, oh, everything's just too hard. Your arms are hanging down by, dragging your knuckles along the ground, for me, I didn't even recognize, up until I had my breakdown and I started seeing a psychologist, I didn't even know I had anxiety. I didn't even know that that's what it was, because nobody had called it that. Nobody had given it a name before. So I didn't know what I was, that I was in trouble. And so just little things like that, maybe, go and have a check. If you're feeling like, you've got more of the bodily side, the somatic signs. So they're the signs in your body. So you got the pit of the stomach, the nervousness, the feeling like, you're choking sometimes, your palms of the hands, your heart's fluttery, not sleeping. You may have skin issues. You may have these other somatic stress responses that you don't kind of recognize what the origin of it is. That's when you need to go and have a chat and just have a check it, because your GP or someone will recognize it for you. They'll go, and actually, that's this. So when I was told that, I was like, what do you mean anxiety? Because I'd pictured anxiety to look very different to what I was experiencing. Like I actually had selective mutism as a child, so I couldn't even speak in public forums or school. I couldn't ask my teacher stuff. I was so unbelievably shy, but that's what it was, just shy. No one said it was anxiety. It's just shyness. It's your temperament, that's your personality. But it was actually a severe form of anxiety that carried on into my adult life, that ended up contributing to, because it's exhausting. Carrying anxiety is exhausting, because it means you have to suppress that and you've got to control it all the time, and you've got to keep it at bay, and it's exhausting. And so I can't encourage people enough. Like, if you just not feeling quite there, or you're looking at everyone else going, how come they're functioning at a capacity that I'm not able, or that you've had some sort of trauma in your life and you kind of wonder, go and speak to someone about it, honestly, because the prevention of it and getting on top of it early and getting those well-being plans in place, prioritizing your health, and all that sort of stuff, it's a priceless endeavor, because, like I mentioned before, recovery is so much harder if you end up hitting a wall. Yeah,
that's brilliant wisdom, really, there to do that, and advice. And I really hope if anybody if you're not sure, if there's the slightest question, please go and get checked out, find out what's going on, deal with it. And the
Go and
good
have a
thing is you
chat.
can come
Yeah.
back and be a better person than you ever were when you work things like this through.
Yeah.
So much
Oh,
better.
look, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I call it my breaking out, because I was able to get the help, and I did a lot of what they call exposure therapy around speaking, and around the anxiety around that. That prior to that, like I couldn't talk to my bosses very well because I'd feel like I was choking. But again, I just thought it was because I was shy, but it was anxiety. So there's hope for you. There's things that you can do that can actually help you really overcome that and leave such a productive life. And in terms of, it'll just increase your work performance and your confidence in the workplace. And it's just such a pleasure then to actually be engaging in your work and engaging in with your colleagues and things like that, because that anxiety and whatnot's alleviated. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah,
that if it's depression or whatever it is, I can't emphasize enough, like getting the support and getting the help, and sometimes it's 2 steps back to go 5 steps forward. But, in those 5 steps forward, it's such there's so much wealth of, of just enjoyment in life. And it's just so
totally.
much more empowerment in that, when you can live your life like so much more open and wholeheartedly, and you get to know yourself better, and you're able to implement those boundaries around like we was talking about well-being. So for me as well, it's like I don't work on my day off. Like I work 4 days instead of 5 now to make sure, and that's because of my well-being. I prioritize that day to do the things because I don't like staying up at night. And like I don't do that. I have that day off to do any of those things, if it's catching up with someone or doing that kind of stuff, to make sure that my sleep isn't interrupted, because for my health and my well-being, and so I can function optimally, I have to prioritize certain things. And
Yeah, so
so
you're
yeah,
self-aware and putting in I guess,
yeah,
the boundaries and the setting your habits in place to make sure that you
yeah.
are fulfilling that. So because you know who you are and what you need to do.
Yeah, but it was a journey, like,
Yeah.
and I learned the hard way. And I guess if there's anything that I could say today is like, don't learn from me, don't learn
Yeah.
the hard way. Like if you can get in the forefront, and really just go, okay, I'm just going to just take stock for a sec.
Yeah.
Am I function? Do a check in. Am I functioning okay? And if not, and you know that you're not, do some stuff, implement some stuff. Don't hit a wall. Don't smash through that thing.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah,
No, that's
make
awesome.
it your.
We could keep going on. Like, I'm loving this. We could just keep going on, and you've dropped a whole bunch of really good wisdom, I think, and wise gold nuggets for people to pick up, practical things that they can do. Any of us can do straight
Mm,
away with what you've been saying.
yeah.
Unfortunately, we are up. Time is
Cool.
there, but
Yep.
I know that was quick. But I do ask, there's a couple of questions I always ask at the end, because tomorrow is not today. We always talk about the ultimate tomorrow, which is not utopia, obviously, but it's living the life that we want. So if you can answer the question, Kylie, what is the ultimate tomorrow?
Oh. Oh, I don't know. Because I think it's so individual. For me, it would be not working at all, but I would never not work. It would be doing what I do without having to have the money issue. That would be my ultimate tomorrow. But just living a life that's fulfilling, that I feel like gives to other people. I love journeying with people. I don't think that that's ever going to be anything that I'll ever do differently. So I don't know what my ultimate tomorrow would be, because I kind of feel like
I think you
life's
just
okay.
summed it up.
Life's
To me, you
okay.
summed it up. It's doing
Uh,
what you're doing now, because you love doing it, not because it earns money, but just because you
yeah.
love doing it and you love helping people and being able to get them through their trauma or their place in life, whatever's happening, to who they want to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now, the second question on there is, how do we create our ultimate tomorrow?
Doing it. um, I'm all about action. Like, we can say all this till the cows come home, and we can give people the tools and the strategies, but I can't give you capacity, and I can't give you willpower, and I can't make you do it. I can tell people that, hey, you really need to prioritize your well-being, but it's up to you to do it. So I'm all about action of stuff. We can say it. It's up to you to do it. So how do you create the best tomorrow? Just doing it.
That's gold, and everyone's got exactly what to do now. None of us can say, I don't know what to do. You just outlined it very clearly, whether it's a boss with a business, whether it's an employee, whether it's whoever it is, you've outlined exactly what and how to do things. Kylie, thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed this, and I know people are going to get a lot out of this. And hopefully people will, who aren't sure about what's happening, am I just tired or what's going on, will go and get checked out and
have a
make
chat.
a difference. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And see where they're at, whatever changes need to happen to live their ultimate tomorrow and live the life they want to live.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kylie.
Thank you. Take care.